franchising.
The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Steven Sakach with my co-host, Mike Liwski, as always, and our special guest today. So a recent Deloitte study found that 94% of executives believe a distinct company culture is vital to business success. Yet only 19% say they have the right culture in place. So culture is built through community, not policy. And when people feel connected to something greater than themselves, performance and purpose often follow. So today we explore how connection fuels business success with a focus on franchising, leadership, and creating a sense of belonging that lasts. Mike, introduce our guest today.
Oh, Steve, I would be absolutely delighted to. So our guest today is Paul Flick. He's the founder and the CEO of Premium Service Brands, which is a multi-brand franchisor that's really behind leading home service companies, including 360-degree painting, ProLift garage doors, and KitchenWise, which I know many of us have heard of. Now, Paul as well has built a thriving franchise ecosystem by focusing on people first. We love that, Paul. Really focusing on people first by creating a community of business owners who share values, the vision, and purpose. Now, Paul, we are so looking forward to the discussion today. Welcome to our show. We're delighted to have you.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Stephen, for having me. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah. So, Paul, there's a recent Gallup study that found that employees who feel a sense of belonging are 3.5 times more likely to be engaged at work. So in franchising, you got the connection is kind of distributed all across everywhere, right? So it can be kind of difficult to maintain some of that belonging. What kind of systems or behaviors help create a sense of unity across locations like that?
Yeah, I think we've got two groups of people. One is obviously the ones that work in our head office that we have access to on a day-to-day basis. That is a lot easier to create and sustain that culture. It's how do you flow it from there down to the franchise partners who all work remote and we see them in person once, 2-3 times a year. That is obviously more difficult and you got to rely on a lot of technology. But the number one thing that I have found is communication. And I've been told this in my marriage, as communication is everything. I would say that it's a huge part of our culture here in being able to communicate what we're doing down to the franchise partners. And they have lots of different assets. They have their own closed group where they can collaborate together, help support other franchise partners in that system. And then we have quarterly calls that are company-wide, all franchise partners, all brands, all executive team, all employees. And then we have monthly newsletters as well. And that's coming from Premium Service Brands. The brands themselves have newsletters that go out every other week. And then they have every month a brand call that is individual to their brand. So honestly, the communication is critical to continue to send the message down that is consistent and is very transparent.
Now, as that scales, Paul, are there even other steps that you're taking to try to keep that sense of belonging strong?
We have FAC setups in all the brands, so we have that individual contact with them on a weekly basis. We have pilot groups that we'll work with if we're going to be testing and rolling out something, so we get their feedback first. And down to, the Kids Lift initiatives that we have that we're rolling out into the individual franchise locations. But it really gets down to the communication and that involvement, those touch points you have with the franchise partners.
Yeah. I mean, I say all the time, right? So many of the world's problems could be solved through communication. Paul, I want to dive a little bit more, maybe learn a little bit more about your culture at Premium Service Brands. So how would you maybe describe your culture? And then also, what do you do to maintain specifically the culture at Premium Service Brands?
Yeah, I think we give a lot of autonomy to our franchise or to our employees. That is first and foremost. We set expectations properly, what is expected. And to give you an example, like we have 14 to 16 days a year, just holidays, whether for Thanksgiving, we give them Wednesday off, obviously the Thursday and the Friday. So everybody has a 5-day weekend for Thanksgiving. On top of that, they have unlimited PTO. If they're getting their job done and they've got, family or kids that they've got to focus on, or they need a mental day, or they want to travel to Europe and work there for 2 weeks, or work there for 1 week and vacation for a week.
Yeah.
All those things, I really believe that they feel ownership and they have autonomy to get their jobs done and to do it well, but also have a lot of freedom and autonomy, to feel like that they are independent of their responsibilities.
That's an excellent example, right? Being able to trust individuals, treat them like adults, and certainly, I love how Tullio says it really within our marketing agency, like give people agency, right? So that they can self-manage themselves. So.
Yeah, and if expectations have been set and they know what their deliverables are,
right,
and they get it done and they've got some other responsibilities or needs, then they can take that time, because I believe when they come back, if they're not worried about their kids because they've taken care of them, they'll be more effective at work.
Would you say, what early lessons maybe shaped your understanding of how connection drives performance?
Yeah, kind of learn that early on. You just can't sell a franchise, train them, and send them out the door and never talk to them again. We have goal alignment, and it's all about us being able to support them and minimizing their mistakes so they maximize their return. So again, communication and having the tools for them to succeed. Making sure that, we have the best in class training, the best in class support and tools that go along with it to facilitate it. But if you're not talking to the franchise partners, whether it's weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, they're going to fail, or they're not going to see them feel a part of a community. So that face-to-face, even though we all like to work remote and all that sort of stuff, that face-to-face communication, one-on-one, is really what's most impactful.
That's definitely ringing true. Yep.
Is that how? So I know a lot of times franchises that may struggle with, at headquarters, you're kind of giving the message, this is how we're doing things. But a lot of times your franchise owners, they come up with great ideas themselves on an approach. So how does that communication line work? Is that in those same meetings, or how do you pull that into what you guys
So we
hear?
have really a flat organization, and that is with intention. I was out last evening for dinner with a franchisee. I still talk to franchise partners. Anyone in the office here can walk into my office at any time. So I want that level of communication amongst all the employees, so people understand exactly where we're going. But to your point, there's no better person to get advice from than the franchisee. They're the ones using the tools that we have deployed on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't mean we got it right. And if you're arrogant enough to not listen, then there's probably one way you're going to go. They use it day to day. They know how to make it better. They know we've gotten a suggestion. We have a huge rollout in the first half of 2026. And it was all coming from franchise partners. And then we've set up a pilot group. We talked to the FAC. The pilot group used this tool. And now that they've signed off on it, we're rolling it out. And we know we have the buy-in from the franchise partners. So yeah, we listen to them all the time. They have emails. I've got a call tomorrow afternoon with a franchisee that has some suggestions. They need to be heard because they're in they're in it day to day at the local level. I'm not.
Yeah, and you said, the key thing I think you said there was, we know we have the buy-in, but really because it's coming from them a lot of times. Hey, let's do this. And so I think as a franchise owner, when you hear some other franchise owners coming up with something successful, that feels like it's a lot easier to buy that in versus, headquarters saying, hey, let's try this. Is that what you kind of mean by that? Or
yeah, like if we get a recommendation from a franchisee, or if it is a corporate initiative, we're never going to roll it out without talking to the FAC and without setting up a pilot group to test it. And if they've bought in, then the rest of the franchise partners have a lot of, I guess they've got a lot of trust that the franchisees who's represented them on the FAC or the pilot group have vetted this, potential software or initiative, and that they will buy into it. So yeah, it's communicating, it's making sure that you don't feel you're smarter than the rest of the franchise partners, and listening.
And Paul, so we've on our podcast previously talked to a number of franchise CEOs like yourself, and I always love to learn how they use, say, metrics, particularly because we think about a community or a sense of community is such a soft, or a qualitative thing, not a quantitative thing. So maybe if you can describe for us within your organization, like how are you able to measure that sense of community success by maybe using some metrics? Like what do you use, and then how are you able to measure it? That's a great one. We do send surveys out to the franchise partners on what they're happy with by department. Like, we're happy with the legal department, and we never get good marks there. But are they happy with the marketing team? And then what other things can you suggest that you would like to see? Are you happy with the franchise coaches? Are you happy with the brand leads? Are you happy with the direction of the company? So we send out surveys, is probably the biggest feedback that we get from the franchise partners. And that sort of drives a lot of initiatives, which is obviously talked about through the FAC and then pilot groups. Yeah. I know that example, I know that example exists, but I haven't really talked to another franchise that's been using it that consistently to be able to get that information from there. And I think there's other soft ways, like what is your attendance at a annual convention? Right. If people are not happy or don't feel engaged, are they going to make the investment in time to get to your convention? Yeah. So there's other, I guess, soft ways, call it, that we can test those things out. Yeah. Oh, that's smart. Smart for sure. So that in the segment that we always love to talk about on our show is purpose. And in fact, it's interesting, right? There have been a number of studies that have been done around purpose. One recently, McKinsey did some research that shows that purpose-driven companies really outperform competitors by 5x in revenue growth over a 10-year time period. And so obviously, on our podcast, we know, and even within our marketing agency know that purpose is a key thing. So I'm just kind of curious to learn, with premium service brands, like how does purpose perhaps, what role does it play? How does it guide leadership within your organization? So I'm a firm believer in a purpose-driven life. I believe everybody, doesn't matter who you are, needs to wake up, put 2 feet on the floor, and what is your purpose? What's driving you that day? And it could be anything. It could be money for some people. It could be philanthropic initiatives. It could be, they're building a legacy to pass down to their kids. But you have to have a purpose-driven life. What gets you up and what pushes you every day? And for me, that has changed throughout the years. Obviously, starting out, it was just to make sure the business was successful. 18 years ago, I had a daughter who was special needs, and I wanted to create a purpose for her, and that was the purpose of Kids Lift. And then Kids Lift sort of developed into being sort of the thread of our company. Franchise partners take on Kids Lift as an initiative to serve their communities in what they're passionate about. And we put the collateral behind them, training behind them, support behind them, to whether it's kid focused, whether it is another initiative that they're homeless or whatever it is, they get to have a purpose around their brand in their local community. And
Anybody can start a business, set up a bunch of pay-per-click campaigns and Angie's List. But what's going to differentiate yourself in that competitive landscape and immersing yourself into community initiatives that give back makes you feel good, hopefully. But hopefully, it aligns with the brand, whether it's ProLift Doors, House Doctors, Grout Medic, that they're in the community giving back to the place we all live in. That having that purpose is part of that cultural thread is Kids Lift for us.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, for our audience, a little bit about some of the initiatives you've done with that community outreach.
Yeah, so it all started with my two kids filling backpacks for schools in our local community for kids who are less fortunate that, if they didn't have food going home on a Friday, they wouldn't have food till Monday when they got back to school. So it started with the kids filling backpacks and providing them. And then I looked at the opportunity and how I could leverage that throughout our franchise partner community to see if others wanted to take on that initiative that, really fills my basket and my kids' baskets in terms of what we give back to our communities. So Vivi Nellen, who is our vice president here at Premium Service Brands and our director of Kids Lift, really put the framework together that we've made an appeal to the franchise partners, both the existings and the ones that come in, to take on Kids Lift in your community. And now I think we're up to 70, 80, 90 locations throughout the United States that on, weekly, monthly, annual basis is giving back to the communities these franchise partners live in.
I love it so much. I mean, it's just a good example of how businesses can really have this ripple effect on their community, and for you to be able to have kind of this, as a franchise owner, be able to come in and tap into some of that, because I think a lot of times they don't know where to start with that, but you've got really kind of this option right there for them to engage with the community at that level. Like you said, anyone can do, and we know this is a marketing agency, anyone can do a pay-per-click campaign, right? But it's really like, well, why don't we do something with a little bit more meaning with your business? And how can we go about doing that? And your ability to be able to kind of spread this original, this idea from you interacting with your kids and the local community. Kudos to you for doing that. And I can't even imagine how many lives you probably touched by now. Maybe you've got data on that. I don't know.
I don't, but maybe he does.
That's maybe turning over towards staying on this topic of purpose, but maybe turning over more towards some of the new franchisees or those looking, to join your organization. How is it that you maybe help a franchisee identify or connect with their why, or help them really connect to something that's much bigger than themselves?
Yeah, that sort of starts in Discovery Day. We tried to really understand what their why is, and is that why something that is going to continue to drive them to success. So it all starts in Discovery Day, and then from there it is obviously through the 3-week training we sort of build around that why. And Mark Hawk, who is North Charlotte area, he says, well, if there isn't Kids Lift, there's no House Doctors. So we really try to take new franchise partners, focus them on their business. They have to make those first and foremost a sustainable business that supports their family, but at the same time is doing good and providing back to the communities that give to their business. And that's through Kids Lift. And there's a lot of, great opportunity for media at the local level when you have a nonprofit giving back to organizations in the community. Yeah. So, it does help their business. Foremost, they've got to make a success of their business or they're not there to provide for Kids Lift. But new franchise partners, we kind of try and find out what that why is at Discovery Day and build around it and see if Kids Lift can be part of that. If not, then they're focused on other things, but this why still matters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say too, probably your successful franchisees are ones that have long-standing whys, right? That have like a big purpose that helps keep maintain that drive.
Yeah, it's back to purpose, right?
Yeah.
And has Kids Lift evolved because of the why of your franchisees? Like they've brought in different ideas or different approaches, or?
So, to give a lot of credit to one person who has really scaled Kids Lift is VB Nellen. I come up with all the ideas. That this team at Premium Server Brands is amazing, taking my ideas and making them happen. And that's what VB did. She put a lot of structure and framework around the Kids Lift opportunity and what's expected from franchise partners, and how to source out a nonprofit in their communities and the assets that go behind it. So she's done most of the scaling of that organization. So deeply grateful for her involvement.
Let structure do the heavy lifting. I love to say that all the time, right? Is you got to have the right kind of framework and structure.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, and one of the things like we really get into here is like that. How can you structure empathy, right? How can you structure these different areas that you don't typically think about in business? When you think about maybe when you started this business and then as Kids Lift came along, did that really help? Did your purpose evolve as you've kind of scaled brands now and you've now have this new, sort of entity within that to integrate?
Yeah, I think when I first started the company back in 2006, it was all survival. It was like, how do I continue to reinvest back in to provide the best framework for our franchise partners to succeed? Because if they succeeded, I was going to succeed. And that sort of evolved. And then having a special needs daughter, I wanted to create a purpose for her. And that's really how Kids Lift became. Was to allow her if and when she wanted to be a part of it, was join Kids Lift, in a support role, but to give her a purpose to go into an office, into an environment every day. And from there, when it started to get big in Charlottesville, we saw the opportunity, and VB Nellen had come from a very philanthropic background, community enrichment background, and it was just the perfect stepping stone to go, we need to scale this. We've got to impact more kids who didn't choose the families they were born into, and what can we do to provide them for meals, back to school, clothing, things that they need to hopefully put them on more of a footing for success.
So Paul, I know a lot of organizations will go the wrong way when they become profit focused. And so I'm interested in maybe hearing your thoughts on what does it mean when an organization or a business is more purpose focused rather than like profit centered?
I kind of look at it both hand in hand. So I believe the more successful my business is, the more profitable it is, the more I can give back to community and to people who are less fortunate. So I'm driven ultimately to set up a foundation that, eventually will get into much bigger philanthropic initiatives. Okay. But for me, profit isn't bad, because I get, it fills my cup to give back. And so I look at it and go, the bigger I can make Premium Service Brands, the profits will end up being given back to a lot of communities in the country.
That's a great way to use it for sure.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, they can go hand in hand as well, where you're involved in the community and there's press and there may be ROI on, doing good, sometimes.
Giving back.
It fills the heart.
A mutually exclusive sort of thing.
That's right. Exactly.
We've got a couple audience questions here. This first one from LinkedIn user. What would be your advice for young entrepreneurs trying to start a community-focused business?
What a great question. I think obviously we talked about profit, but capital, making sure that you have the proper capital to create the appropriate infrastructure. If you've never been in that, I would highly encourage anybody to get somebody that comes from that industry so you can minimize your mistakes. Because the more mistakes you make, the more capital you need before you're able to really have a solid footing to continue to give back to the community.
All right, I love that. And let's see, we've got another question from audience members. So, Paul, how do you see your company in 10 years?
That's a great question, Martha. I'm 57 and a half. So my goal is not to be day-to-day active in the company in 10 years, but I have this amazing team that is ready to step in, that's younger than me, and that was done on purpose. And hopefully I'm at a point where I can be executive chairman of the company, but more focused on a family office, a family foundation, where I can give back and have my kids be a part of that as they grow up. So that hopefully 10 years giving back a lot to the communities.
Nice. So let's see. A question we kind of get into sometimes is talking about emotional intelligence as being sort of critical for businesses. I think too, as you're dealing with a younger generation coming up, they're kind of looking for probably more of that because of the same operating the same way as we have for decades. It doesn't quite fly sometimes. But so Harvard Business Review found that leaders with strong emotional intelligence create teams that outperform others by 20%. So what role does emotional intelligence play in how you lead your teams and your franchise network?
Yeah, I think first of all, you got to be empathetic, you have no idea what's going on in somebody's life. Whether you're passing them on the streets in a car, at a business meeting, you have no idea what's going on in somebody's life. So you got to be empathetic. And I think that is first and foremost. I don't believe the kids who are graduating have graduated over the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years. They're different than my generation. They are not driven for money necessarily. They are driven for purpose. They need money to obviously live and live comfortably. And that's what the company does and supports them in that. But they, our staff here is very involved in Kids Lift in the Charlottesville area. And they just light up when there's an event for them to go to, whether it's at Oakland School or one of the other schools in the area. They just light up to give back to the community that they live in. And that becomes more important for them than, making $100,000, $500,000, $1 million. They are very different than my generation. And I think being able to continue to communicate to them what's going on, what to expect, what's the vision of the company, and how does that fit into, community and giving back. But the emotional aspect of it is much stronger for those younger kids than it is for my generation anyways. So it's very important.
Yeah, I think consciously they evolved to the point where, like you're at right now, 57, and you're thinking about, more meaning and things like that. There's a lot of gravity from that, for younger generations. So there's been a lot of heavy lifting by generations that came before it to kind of work their way through to get to that point. So they're coming up and they get to that point a lot faster. So when they're entering the workforce, it's like, okay, this is great, but I really want a little bit more meaning and purpose, like you said.
Yeah, I think so. If all we did on our monthly internal calls is just celebrate EBITDA, it just wouldn't land, but the biggest, the slide that gets the most encouragement is how many new franchisees took on Kids Lift. That's what really gets them. And I think it's great.
Yeah, well, I know getting out of your bed, like you said, every morning, if you're the younger generation, are they going to be thinking about EBITDA? That's not going to drive. Right? No, that's going to want them to crawl back in bed again. So no, I think it's when you've got a company purpose that's, about shareholder or investor profit, we've seen some of those out there. It's that's not motivating anyone. To get out of bed in the morning. For sure.
That's right. No.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, even that's important, right? But it facilitates the other stuff. But yeah, certainly I wouldn't want that to be the focus. As well, Paul, for those who may be looking to join your organization, right? Franchisees, they often face all this pressure and uncertainty. They're making a big investment, especially in times of their life. So I'm kind of curious, when it comes to that emotional intelligence, like how do you support the other leaders? How do you support, some of the franchisees to make sure that they too are developing this key quality of emotional intelligence?
Yeah, like the emotional or that purpose that they want and why they bought a franchise.
Yeah.
You get into the day-to-day grind and you might have missed a budget, or you might, have some challenges with customers or employees, et cetera. It's like, you got to bring them back to the purpose. Why did you come into the franchise system to begin with? That if that hasn't changed, we can get through all the other stuff. But it's really reflecting back to why they got into it, and then the business plan that they have built to support that why. And that's where that one-to-one conversations are really powerful and impactful, is reminding them, not through an email or a text, but getting on a webinar, meeting them face to face, and really talking to them about the why again. Like, get back to what drove you to this decision is critical, which is, again, gets back to communication and that one-on-one interaction.
Yeah, so key. It's so important. If we really want to try to balance those points of accountability and empathy, right? Why did you start, this organization? Certainly creates the accountability part, and as well, why did you start this? There had to be something, bigger than what, bigger than yourself than you wanted to become for that franchisee. And then also, as Stephen was kind of speaking, it reminded me that of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It really seems like a lot of these younger generations now, don't start quite at the bottom with, contentment and safety, security, and food. They're really looking for, an opportunity to reach some of those higher levels of the hierarchy.
I'd say maybe they're quicker to sacrifice some of that lower level. Yeah, because I feel like, it's still there, but no, maybe it's just a little quicker to sacrifice in some of those lower.
Yeah, they've seen the pain that the older generations have gone through to acquire it. They're like, it's just not even worth it.
So true.
So thinking about like that empathy, and you mentioned kind of the one-on-ones, how do you train or coach, kind of your franchise leaders to approach their work with empathy?
Yeah, and Roxanne Conrad, who's our chief operating officer, who really oversees all the brands, does a phenomenal job of that. She listens. We were given 2 ears and one mouth, and we should use it in proportion. And, we want to instill that if somebody is not doing well and the franchisee is having stress and, I guess, uncertainty at home, for us to pile on that doesn't help the situation. We need to listen and then speak and understand where their heartburn is coming from, and put a plan together that hopefully eliminates it or puts them on a path that will put them on a better structure for success. But, empathy is a lot of listening. Don't be judgmental. And Roxanne really, we had the Dale Carnegie Company come in and train all of our brand leads and franchise coaches. And really it gets down to, a lot of it is listening and having empathy, so that, they can really unload. Then we can create a plan, because if they don't communicate, it's hard to communicate and help fix them. So you've really got to get them in a spot where they feel safe, they can unload on you, and then put a plan together after that.
Yeah, that's kind of you've got the accountability side already, but you're trying to balance empathy with that, right? And so
That's
you're taking into that approach to that accountability, right?
Yeah.
So, Paul, one question we ask everyone who comes on the show is some form of this is, what role does love play in business?
I mean, it's huge. I just, the employees here, regardless if they've been here a week or decade, I love every one of them, and I'm concerned about them and their families, because if they're distracted or they're under stress, that's going to impact them coming to work every day and performing at the level that they should. So, love is huge. And the franchise partners who have, scraped together life savings or taking out a big loan to buy a franchise and start a business, that is a daunting responsibility on the franchisor. We took their money. We owe them every bit of training and support to see their success and help facilitate that. And I love them for that. I respect them. I love them. That goes across the franchise partners, employees, but love plays a huge role in it. I think you have to have compassion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, we've gotten so many great answers on that question from leaders. And you can kind of see and feel kind of your love for your employees and stuff. And I think that's, I'm sure it's felt across the company and even, at the franchise level. As you look forward to kind of the future of your business or business in general, what advice would you give leaders who want to build cultures rooted in care and connection?
Do it now. Do it when you're smaller, if you can, because it's easier to get buy-in when it's smaller versus a huge company that has 2,000-3,000 franchise partners and hundreds of employees. I think that communication becomes much more difficult and a longer timeline. So I was lucky enough to have Bibi join the company, who really instilled, that culture of giving back and empathy. And so do it as soon as you can. Even if you are big, it's just going to be a heavier lift. That's all. But it'll pay off.
Yeah, if you're big, I always kind of think, well, just start somewhere, little by little, a little make a lot over time. But it's such a good point. If you're kind of small and you're starting out, start now, because what that's going to do is going to attract people that are interested in those same values, right? That same culture right from the get-go. And so it'll be kind of infused in everyone who's coming on board. Mm-hmm. Would you say is that the main reason why you're thinking do it now, or is it just because it's such a big boulder in a bigger company to move later?
Well, I think it is, but then that's just saying, well, it's too big, so I wipe my hands of this.
Yeah, exactly. We aren't going to go for that.
That's quitting. So, as you said, maybe it's a certain department you start with, or maybe it's a certain just one franchise system, depending on how big it is. But just do it. It really does create a special environment for people to work in. It helps with retention. It just do it, because it will pay off.
Yeah. And it does also, another way to look at it is it does sound really big. But you don't need to start big, right, Paul? I mean, there's probably things that you do on a daily basis that helps start that culture of care. I don't know. Are there any sort of habits or daily rituals maybe that you've implemented to try to build that culture?
I'm not sure I have any daily. We all get together for lunch. The company brings in lunch. And that's a great time for us all to get together. Today, we celebrated one of our employees' birthdays. So those little things go a long ways. And, employees go, wow, that's really nice. And I'm like, well, that's great, because what it does, me bringing you in lunch, you only take 30 minutes for lunch, but if you go out for lunch, you're taking an hour and a half. So, so there's more productivity. But they really connect on a personal level when they're sitting there having lunch together, and we bring in lunch. So it makes them sit together, and they have lots of activities outside of the company now. And they're hanging out together. So it just starts with something, whether it's lunches, and it will pay off. It's great to have culture is special.
Yeah. Our producer Tullio put that in the chat. Yeah. Breaking bread is definitely, I think, a huge contributor to being able to connect others more closely. Mm-hmm. So Paul, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and your experience with us today. Now, for those that want to connect a little bit more with you afterwards, where would you like them to follow up?
Probably the best place is just our website, premiumservicebrands.com.
Perfect.
Paul, thanks for being on today. It was a great conversation. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. You know, if this conversation inspired you to build connection into your own leadership, please share it with a colleague as well, or a team member. And we will see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.